around the world you are joining us. We are living in between worlds. We are a community of diasporas of the world, first and second generation immigrants who come together in a collective where we can share our lived experiences, share our thoughts, share our feelings, really open up our hearts to different topics that we might not necessarily be able to kind of really dive in deep with people around our day-to-day life. And so this is where we get to come together to have meaningful and healing conversations. And today's topic will be on unraveling guilt. And we usually do these live videos every 2 weeks as a way to kick off our meetups that happens on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So we invite you to come and chat with us, come together in a safe and closed room environment online. It's going to happen on May 7th. So if this topic really resonates with you, please come and join in on the conversation. And so today, Nuria and we are going to be kicking off the topic just by sharing our thoughts on unraveling guilt. And so, hello, Nuria. I feel like a great, hello, love. I just love this soul, this being right here so much. And it's just such an honor to be able to chat with you on such a deep topic as well. I feel like you and I will really kind of like unravel guilt here as much as we can in the next hour.
we need a little bit more, but let's take the hour.
Yeah. So I think a great place to start is just before just before getting on here, I looked up the definition of guilt, and it's so interesting to me. So this is through Google, through the Oxford Dictionary, and they say guilt as a noun, the fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime. Okay. As a verb, it notes informal definition is make someone feel guilty, especially in order to induce them to do something. So what are your thoughts on that? Let's look at the noun definition, like the fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime.
Oh my God. So when I think about both definitions, because I cannot detach one from another one, like the first thoughts that come up are manipulation and reputation. Because I feel like the guilt is not about what you do, as it is about how someone around you feels about what you are doing. And that impacts their reputation through their lenses.
Yes.
So because they are experience that sense of being uncomfortable, they put it on you. So they manipulate you to carry on with the guilt. So it's awful what I am saying, because
yes. No, I love that perspective, because usually, for me, once I think guilt, it's like, oh, fuck, shit, like, what did I do kind of thing, right? Like you take it on, you feel it. It's an emotion, right? So it's like, I feel it right away. But I just love your perspective because it already right away, it takes it away from you as a person. You're just stepping out and already kind of like looking at this, what is actually happening, what's the actual thing that's going on, not about the details, not what you did, but like what is actually going on here. And yeah, the way you describe it, it's like it's actually this person having this experience and putting it on you. That's so interesting.
Because thinking, for example, like trying to recall examples or moments in my life. I remember like growing up, my mom was really brave when she chose to be a single parent.
Yeah.
For whatever circumstance, right? But I can see in a distance how hard it was for her to face her family, because she was the first family member choosing to be a single parent, which at that time seemed to be a crime, an offense, right? Because family's name, and we didn't even belong to a upper class family, right? But it's the name of the family. So you are not married, you're out of the norm, so you have to consider yourself less than and carry with the guilt because you're putting the family on that spot. Or the same thing with having an affair. And again, I wouldn't like to drive this conversation to morality, that what is right and what is wrong, but just by, if someone has an affair, that person has to carry on with the guilt of betraying or whatever it is that the partner is experiencing.
Yeah.
So it's not about the triggers, or it's not about the choices we made.
Yeah.
It's about others' definition of don't alter my environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that because it really kind of puts things into perspective. What you had just shared, it just like kind of shook me a bit because, like I mentioned, like my first reaction when I think of guilt is like, oh my gosh, it's like the ego jumps in. It's like, oh, it's all about me, right? And what I love about, this definition, the fact of committed a specified or implied offense or crime, this to me is just so interesting because why is it that we feel guilty if we haven't actually committed a crime or an offense? Right? Like, where did this concept even come from? This sense of like feeling guilt. It's like, yeah, I haven't actually done anything to like I feel like for me it's like first off it's kind of that check-in is like, did I kill somebody? No, right? Did I? And then the next level is like, did I intentionally harm somebody? It's like, no, right? Already right away, that kind of relieves that sense of guilt. But it's, what are you going to say?
Just like, you're so right, because it's, if you commit an offense or a crime, you go to jail, period, right? Like, it's in the law, you go to jail.
Yeah.
But when it's not something as bad as kill someone, the punishment is, we have to remind you that what you did made us feel uncomfortable. So whatever you do from now on, you have to experience sacrifice.
Yeah.
To pay for that guilt.
Right. It's like putting the person automatically into emotional torment kind of jail.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, for example, like with the same example about my mom, right? She was really brave. Of course, it was like late 70s, like nobody did that, right? So it was totally out of norm. But I carried with the guilt. And this is the sacrifice because of my mom's choices. I had to be less than everybody else. So everything was about, I'm not legitimate. So deal with it. Like, you cannot have the same access to the same opportunities that everybody else is because you represent what is dysfunctional. So there has to be a reminder. Family has to be the structure. If you're out of the structure, this is your jail. We're going to remind you. We're going to remind you, this is not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay. And being a single parent wasn't even my choice. I was the daughter. So it's I think the offense is on the other way around.
Yeah. That's, and it's so interesting to kind of think about, where would, for any of us, like our culture, our parents, right? Like, this is where it's like, where did they learn this, right? And it's so interesting how it's just keeps getting passed on and passed on and passed on, right? And it's just like, she probably doesn't intentionally want to hurt you, right? But it's just because it's so conditioned, right? It's so conditioned that we have to fit in this box. And if we don't fit into this box of whatever label we apply, then you are casted out, then you are guilty, then you're in the wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are trapped, right? Like, it's like being on a cycle where, okay, if I'm guilty, and there is no way that I can fix whatever was broken.
Yeah.
Because if I try to fix it, people don't know where to put me because they have to forgive the offense.
And it's an offense that wasn't even, if we really scale back, it's not even existent, right? Like, it's just,
it's like,
through
if I
so many
you,
yeah.
If I forgive you, next person won't get the lesson.
So that's where you can continue that rule or that law.
Yeah.
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 And that's where forgiveness is so hard.
Jail.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up forgiveness, because it's always, it gets paired with guilt all the time, right? Guilt and forgiveness. Like, and so many of us, like, I know I'm speaking for myself, like, a lot of the times I have to do the work internally to forgive myself for holding on to guilt for something that isn't existent, right? It's because of some rule that somebody had set ages ago that has been passed on through generations and generations. And I'm somehow going to put myself into this jail, into this trap. And it's like the forgiveness, sometimes we think it's the forgiveness is for the other person, but it's not. It's actually for yourself, because you're the one that's actually holding on to this, right? You're the one that's feeling the pain and living with that pain, right? And so for me, it's like I see that the forgiveness, if ego aside, it's kind of like, yeah, no, actually, this forgiveness is for me.
Lately, I've been thinking a lot
Yes.
about forgiveness.
Yes.
And at this moment in my life, I don't believe in forgiveness. And I'm going to explain a little bit why. Because as you said, right, like it's not about the other person. Because if I forgive someone, that doesn't delete what happened, right? Like the impact is already there. And I'm the one who has to deal with the impact, not the other person. So if I forgive or not, doesn't matter. If I practice forgiveness with myself, there's a slippery slope between really heal the impact or justify not moving on because of the impact. So I was like, okay, so what is possible if I don't believe in forgiveness? What is greater for me to heal? And I found out it was the space of gratitude. There I can heal. And it's not easy because I have to be grateful for the existence of that person who created an impact on me.
Yeah. Can you put it into a context, say like, your situation with your mother? How would that play out?
I'm going to give you a better example.
Okay. Sure.
And it was with my father. So he was never in the picture. I met him when I turned 33, like the Jesus Christ age, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's quite symbolic, even though I'm not religious. I think it's in a significant age. So, but before that, I grew up with an idea about him based on all of these comments from the outside world about my father. Those comments were really accurate, I'm not gonna lie, but they came with lots of emotions, right? Like, he's this, he's that, da, da, da. Anyways, during my life, I had ups and downs, and all of those downs have my father's image, the one I created. Anyways, I met him, time passes, and he passed away 2 weeks ago. And I got so many messages from family like, well, at the end of the day, he was your father. So I was like, what I supposed to do with that? Like this indulge towards age or towards pain or towards death. Like, hey, hold on. So at a certain point, I felt guilty for not crying. was like, hold on. If I am in the space of gratitude, nobody's guilty here. And I became not the outcome of my father, I became the outcome of my experiences.
Yes.
So there's nothing to forget.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally see that this is like we're cutting right to like, let's not just unravel, let's just like show that guilt doesn't even have to exist, because there is nothing to forgive. There's nothing to be guilty in the first place of, right? I think that really hits the ball. Like, you get to choose that experience. Do you want to, lock yourself up, or do you want to show yourself that this is like, there's actually nothing to be guilty of, and that you could choose a different emotion like gratitude to experience it, right?
And for me, that's a way to honor him,
Yeah.
the genes that he passed along to me,
Yeah.
and also to honor my mother's choices. Because if I am in the space of forgiveness, is have to justify a lot. So, and that's the punishment. Like, okay, when you justify, it hurts more and more and more, because in the justification there is lots of judgment.
Yeah, and it's a lot of thinking, right? It's a lot of going through and thinking. I think about, if I feel guilty of something, I will go back to the scenario and run it in my mind over and over again. Exactly what point did I do something? Exactly what point did I say? Well, what is it exactly? Like, right? And it's just so much, justifying. It's like, the ego wants to go in and kind of lay out all the evidence and like do a full-on trial, right? And it's just time consuming, it's energy consuming. And so I think what I'm recognizing more and more, that forgiveness isn't about forgiveness of the situation or forgiveness of the person. Like, when I go in and do the forgiveness, it's actually forgiving the thought, like forgiving this, which I am going to classify as a thought from generation. It's of supremacy, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, it's a thought that wasn't mine to begin with. And it's just a thought that I kind of flash into my mind, and it's not mine. It's not truth. And I think it's just forgiving that thought for showing up. It's kind of like, I think that's kind of my process, is like, okay, I'm just forgiving myself for having this thought and feeling bad for having this thought, because I think that's really what it is. It's like believing in the thought, believing that, oh, I did something wrong. And, oh, I should have done something differently. I should have said this. I should have like been more compassionate. I should have, all the shoulds, right? So I think for me, it's like really noticing that thought doesn't mean anything, and that it's just a past thought that I had adopted from somewhere, and and took it on as guilt. And that's what, for me, that whole process of forgiveness is in just forgiving of even having that thought. And so I think if we're going like deep, like that's kind of where my mind goes now, is really kind of seeing that it's not about the person, not about the actions, but really about just Societal conditioning.
You know what? While I was listening to you, I thought, yeah, how many times I took on the guilt before I do something, because I know that what I'm gonna do, and I said that in past tense, but still I can catch myself when I'm gonna do something, and okay, I'm guilty in advance because I'm gonna choose for my freedom. So if you, we can go all the way through the system, but, and I don't want to be catastrophic here, but if you're a woman, you're guilty, period. Like you're disrupting so many structures that, okay, in advance, I'm guilty, right?
Right. Yeah.
And probably right now I can be aware of those moments.
Yeah.
But let's say like 7 years ago when I chose to came to Canada,
yeah,
I wasn't aware. So I knew, or I experienced that what I was doing wasn't okay.
Right.
Like leaving my country and putting my family on hold while I was here. Like I was disrupting my structure. So of course I was guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting, right? Like I think on the, like if we were to put this in a context that we can all relate, I think it's that idea of saying no to someone and saying yes to your, like you said, your freedom, saying yes to yourself. It's like saying yes to me means saying no to someone else. And immediately it's like, even before you say no to the other person, you're feeling guilty for that, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And also I would like to go back to my first point about manipulation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I can see now that, okay, if I'm guilty, or I learn how to manipulate the system to survive, or I allow the system to manipulate me to get something and try to belong, even if it's inside of a box. But it seems like if you're guilty, manipulation is tied to it. Like, okay, you are less than, okay, so because you're less than, this is the only thing that we have for you. You're an immigrant. And not an immigrant. You're a woman. You're a single parent. And also. So you're guilty for so many things that you're manipulated by the system to be in the box the system designed for you. And there is a point that the system manipulates you so hard that you believe that that's right. That punishment is right.
Yeah, and that guilt becomes automatic, right? Like you don't even think about it, and you're in it already.
So
well,
you're
like you said, even before you do it. Yeah. There's going to be sacrifices that come from it. Like and not only manipulation, sacrifices come with it, right? Like it's like
it's adorable.
There's no win-win.
We're laughing.
There's no win-win, right?
It's funny that we're laughing, like really.
Yeah. And I think this is where it's really allowing ourselves to see that the whole concept is very ridiculous, right? And that's why we're laughing, right? So, we're hoping that I'm seeing like our conversation here. I'm hoping that it'll bring light to so many of you that we don't have to take this so seriously, like, because that's the thing. It's like, it's just been ingrained into our system and we've been conditioned to it. And how we can unravel, how we can free ourselves of it is really first doing, turning our focus to see how it's a ridiculous concept that there's no win-win for anybody.
And you know what? That also that doesn't give you the opportunity to experience humanity. Because like a short story, when an ex-boyfriend of mine, I remember that one day we had a sort of an argument for something I did that it had a massive impact on him. And I remember he was like looking at my ass and saying, Nuria, promise me, please promise me that you were never gonna do this again. Never, because it hurts so much. I was so close to say, I promise you, I would never gonna do that again. And something happened in that conversation that the way that he was looking at me, I got so present to the impact that I said, listen, I cannot promise you that. I can promise you that I'm going to be aware of the impact. But I cannot promise that this won't happen again, because this is who I am. So it's getting present to be human.
I think that's where it's like, it's not right for us to apologize for who we are. Right. And I think that's the first key, is like, when we find ourselves apologizing for who we are, then yeah, like you said, we're not allowing our human experience to exist. We're not allowing ourselves to be human. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not inviting to justify like, okay, this is who I am, so suck it up. No, right? Because no, that's misery. It's more about being aware of why are we sitting here looking at one another to learn.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part of it. And I see it as like, I use the concept of mirror. We're each individual, like each person in your life are mirrors here to help you see things that you cannot see, right? To help you learn, right? We're all teachers and students of each other. And I think that's such a beautiful way. It's a lot more forgiving, it's a lot more ease and flow when we allow ourselves to live that way, to see that we're here to learn. We're not here to judge, right? That's the piece, right? We're not here to just, it's going to be natural, right? And I think that's where the judgment's going to be natural, but allowing, I think coming back for me, it's always coming back to, okay, allowing that, okay, this judgment is just a conditioned judgment that I have, and I can choose to let go of it and choose to let it pass. But going back to kind of like your example of, your boyfriend saying to you, your ex-boyfriend saying to you, like, don't do this again. Like on the other end, I was thinking about like how many times we make decisions ahead of time so that we don't feel the guilt, so that we avoid feeling guilty, right? And that's where like the people pleasing comes in, right? Like appeasing someone, so then I won't ever have to feel that again.
I don't know what are you talking about.
Right?
Yeah, being in denial.
Yeah.
And it's like in the world of pretending.
Mhm. Yeah. And I see, like, I know it's kind of, when I did my work on my mom, I really made her feel guilty, for abandoning us when we were kids, like every time I interacted with her, I was totally like, no, she's got to make up for abandoning us, right? Like, and when I did my work with my relationship with my mom and started to recognize that, she, like, the other person, like this person, like your experience with your mom, it's like she didn't purposely do anything to say, like, I'm gonna abandon my kids right now. Right? Like, she did what was the most loving thing and most safe thing for her, because she was probably feeling a lot of guilt as well, right? Like, she was marrying into a family that didn't approve of having a wife with kids already, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
my sister and I, we stayed here in Vancouver, and she moved to Hong Kong, but it's kind of like, she did what was best for her in that moment and what was most loving thing, right? And I grew up putting her into a box, and it's so, yeah. But really recognizing that, I think that's where the freedom comes in, is like allowing myself to see that at the end of the day, I'm actually suffering as well. Like, so both parties are suffering. As soon as I guilt another person, or if I feel guilty, it's like it goes both ways, right?
Yeah. It goes both ways. And also, I think it's really dangerous if you personally don't dig on the guilt, because if there is a personality that tends to control everything, being guilty, it's okay. And in order to be guilty, you need a victim. And it's really dangerous, because it's when we get stuck in our indulgent emotions.
Yeah.
And it's so harmful that I think it's is the root of every toxic relationship. And if someone is not guilty, we're just, creating a monster that is going to become its own worst version.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's that, yeah. So I was thinking, like, it's that pretending and manipulation is the same thing. When you're pretending, you're actually manipulating the situation, or you're manipulating the other person, right? And, I can see how, like, I was guilt tripping my mom. Like, it was basically like, I knew better. She had to listen to me, like, she's got to, like, agree to everything that I wanted, because she had to, like, um what's the phrase that we use, like, anyways, heal the wounds, right? Kind of like, so that's where it's like, there is no wounds to begin with, except the wound that I keep opening, keep creating, right? Keep having.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, it eats away at you, and it's no fun. Yeah.
It's not fun. It's not fun. And I can't catch myself. I mean, I'm 44 years old, so I can still catch myself when I have a phone call with my mom.
Yeah.
and she says something that triggers anger on me. Of course, I forgave my mom a while ago. But when it's convenient and there is a trigger, right? It's yummy because that indulgent emotion is just boiling inside of me. So my mom is the best person for me to, you are guilty. And now, and my entire life, I've been carrying all that guilt. So deal with it, mom.
Oh my gosh. I love, okay, so I love watching drama movies. Like, but I think that's the thing. It's the ego. It's feeding the ego. It's like, if you want drama, bring in guilt. That's all. So if you want a peaceful life, then let go of the guilt. Right?
Yes, and it's not easy because it's pleasurable. That's why guilty pleasure, right?
You said yummy, and that's what triggered for me. I was like, oh yeah, that's what's yummy about it, is the drama. There's moments when we want drama, and it's like, oh, let's bring it in. And it's like, guilt is the secret ingredient.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
So it's like I'm an addict, right? To bring drama.
Yeah.
Because it's yummy.
Yeah. No, totally. It is. It can be, like it feeds a part. Well, it feeds the ego, and the ego is like, yes.
Give me more. Give me more.
Right. And then we get caught up into it. And then until we don't recognize ourselves. And then we're like, okay, what's going on here?
And then, of course, like, I was just thinking, like, I don't know what does my mom think on her end, right? But I can picture her saying, like, oh, right. Nuria is allowed to blame on me because I chose to be a single parent.
Right.
I can see that she embraces the guilt. Like, all right.
I think it's important to kind of recognize how we learn to use guilt as a way of protection, or at least the survival part of the brain thinks it's a great way to protect yourself. So I think there's that aspect as well that, we can bring to light, because I for myself, like, it feels like I'm protecting myself if I like standing up for myself in this way, right? Like, this is where there's that fine line of like, are you truly doing this out of like love and compassion for yourself and for the other person? Or are you doing this to like, make a point and justify, right, that you are right, and making this person wrong for something that either parties don't have to be right or wrong in, right? Yeah. But this is where it's like the survival part of the brain sees it as a way of kind of like, no, this is going to protect your feelings. It's going to protect you from getting harmed emotionally. So let's just cut all ties here, and just because that's what I naturally do sometimes, is like, nope, I'm just going to block this person, or I'm going to stop, give them the silent treatment. Right. Yeah. It's like, not talking to you. You don't exist. You're not here, but I'm thinking about you 24/7. But this is where it's like, yeah, like we think it's a protective mechanism. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that it's not, right? Even though the brain kind of initial reaction is to like use it as a way to kind of shield yourself.
Yeah. Yes, and also I'd like to touch on what you mentioned about avoidance, because when you accept you're guilty, it's also comfortable. Like you're no longer responsible for your well-being. So, okay, I'm guilty, I'm out. So I can see myself in many situations where I was like, okay, and I took the guilt because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, here's my hands, put the cuffs on, throw me in jail. It's fine. Right? It's just giving up on yourself, right?
On yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So guilt has so many layers.
So many layers. And like, I love that we are really, like, truly unraveling guilt. It's such a perfect topic, right? Like, there's just so many layers, right? And I think this is where we can explore in so many different angles. Um, and I always love, like, with living in between worlds, like bringing in the culture piece, bringing in kind of the whole immigrant experience and how that plays a part, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think so much, if we speak about immigrant experience, I know, the guilt of, like, you gotta do well here, you gotta do well in life, that whole box of, like, if you don't, then you're guilty of not succeeding, you're guilty of not doing well in this world. Right? I think this is where we can kind of go into shaming, right? Like the guilt and the shaming kind of ties in well together.
Yeah.
But there's anytime we have expectations, right? That's where it's like right away you're put in that box.
Yeah. But the funny part is that it's guilt is so quiet. Like nobody says like that. Like, nobody talks about guilt. It's gonna happen, it's gonna come, you're gonna experience things, but nobody talks about that.
I love that
And
it's quiet. It's so
yeah,
true. At least for me, it's like it just comes in, tiptoes in, right? And it's like
yeah,
automatically, you could have a look with someone and have that, okay, right away.
yeah,
There's an
yeah,
exchange of guilt somewhere here, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
and this is why we're bringing it to light. We're talking about guilt. Let's talk about guilt.
Let's talk
Because
about guilt. And as you said, as immigrants, it's really important to talk about that
yeah,
because it shows up every time that you go and knock doors to get a job. Every time that you want to enroll your kids in school, every time that you're gonna prepare your kids' lunch, every time that you exist in the system is gonna show up.
yeah, yeah.
That's that's the risk we take on when we're in between.
And I think this is where the more we talk about it in light of, like, it's not actually a problem that we should really pay attention to. Like, it's not really, unless you are really committing a crime and doing something, that the law says you're guilty, right? Like, this is where can we allow ourselves to move? Like, it's not going to be like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to stop feeling guilty. But the more we talk about seeing it in the light of, like, okay, it's not something we need to attach ourselves to. and it's not useful for anybody, helping ourselves see, like having that awareness of like, okay, it's not useful here. So I can let it go. It's not useful. I can let it go. Right. And the more we talk about it, the more that we can learn, right. And create that new habit of just, okay, this is just systemic and we can just leave it.
Yeah. And being more aware.
Yeah.
Being more aware. Am I choosing to be guilty?
Yeah. Yeah.
And reflect, right? And go within and explore what part of the humanity I'm missing here.
Totally. I think right now what image came for me is like, because we're talking about going to jail, like, am I putting myself into a prison right now? Right? Do I feel trapped? Right? Like, I'm a visual person. So I think for me, that's what really works, is like having that visual. I was watching a Korean drama over the last few days. Like, it's a series, and it was such a beautiful, beautiful story. It's called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. Or it's okay not to, yeah, I think it's okay not to be okay. Yeah, that's what it's called. And there are different images of how, like, the inner child, the characters, there's scenes where they'll substitute the adult with the child version of them. And so for me, I just love that visual of like, okay, am I taking care of my inner child right now? Because all of these rules are like not mine. They're just from these adults who think they know everything, right? And this is where I'm like, okay, do I want to nourish? Do I want to nurture that child in me? Or do I want to, like, a more graphic image is like, take out the bamboo feather duster, right, on myself. Like, I don't want to do that, right? It's the most loving thing for me to do is just take myself out of this prison and set myself free.
Yeah.
And just focusing on doing that, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful. All right. Well, thank you for diving in deep with me on this.
I love it. I always love it. And I'm so looking forward for our conversation. And
yeah, so it won't be this Saturday. It'll be the following Saturday. So come join us. Come unravel with us, and just let's help each other see that this is something we don't have to spend time and energy on anymore. Let's let go of it. Let's really just help each other. Let's just let go and see how we can navigate and be humans as this.
Exactly. Be humans.
Yeah. All right, my love.
Thank you. So I love you. Have an incredible day, everybody.
Yes. Bye.